The night was silent, but it was not peaceful. A strange glow spread across the horizon, bright and burning like fire. At first, people thought it was a storm, or maybe meteors falling from the sky. But the glow did not fade. It grew stronger, hotter, and the earth itself seemed to tremble. Birds scattered from the trees. Dogs howled in fear. And then came the sound. It was not thunder. It was not wind. It was a deep roar, a roar so powerful that it shook the windows and rattled the bones of everyone who heard it. People ran outside, their faces filled with fear, searching the skies for the source of the terrible sound. What they saw was something no one on earth had ever imagined. Shapes appeared in the firelit sky, huge, winged shapes, their scales glowing like molten metal. They were dragons. Not one, not two, but a herd, flying together in a great circle. Their wings spread across the heavens like black sails, and their eyes burned like stars. For a moment, the world froze. Humanity had seen many strange things in its history, but never this. Dragons belonged to legends and fairy tales, not to the real world. Yet here they were, descending from the clouds, their massive bodies casting shadows over the land. Among the crowd of frightened people stood one man. His name was Daniel. He lived a quiet life on the edge of the city, far from anything important, far from power and far from war. But as the dragons lowered themselves to the ground, their wings stirring storms of dust and ash, Daniel felt something inside him stir as well. The earth cracked beneath the weight of the landing beasts. Fire licked the air as they opened their mouths, and yet they did not attack. They did not burn buildings, they did not destroy, they did not roar in anger. Instead, the dragons bowed their massive heads. A silence fell, heavy and unnatural, as if even the wind held its breath. Daniel could not believe what he was seeing. These were creatures that could have ended the city in minutes. Yet they were kneeling. Not to an army. Not to a king. Not to the world. They were kneeling to him. The people around Daniel backed away, afraid to even breathe. Some fell to their knees, praying, whispering that the end of days had come. Others screamed and ran, desperate to escape. But the dragons did not move. They stayed low, their golden eyes locked on Daniel, waiting. Daniel's heart pounded in his chest. He wanted to step back, to run, to scream like everyone else, but his legs would not move. Something stronger than fear held him in place. A voice, deep and echoing, rose inside his mind. It was not spoken aloud, but he heard it as clearly as if someone had whispered in his ear. "Human, we seek you." Daniel gasped. He looked around, searching for the source, but there was no one near. The voice was not from outside. It was inside his head. One of the dragons, larger than the rest, lifted its head slightly. Its scales shone like burning copper, its horns curved like black blades, and its eyes seemed endless. Again, the voice spoke, and Daniel knew it was coming from that creature. "We have traveled far. We have fought much. And now, we come to you. Human, we need your help." Daniel staggered back. Help. From him. He was no soldier, no leader. He was just a man. Why would dragons, beings of fire and power, ask anything from him? But before he could speak, before he could even think, the ground shook again. Far above, the sky lit up with a different fire. Not the fire of dragons. This was sharp, cold, and metallic. Streaks of light cut across the heavens. They were not stars. They were ships. Enormous shapes broke through the clouds, their metal hulls shining with deadly purpose. Alien ships. The people screamed louder now, pointing, crying out in terror. Earth had never seen such things, but the dragons had. Their heads rose, their wings flared, and for the first time, Daniel saw fear in their burning eyes. The copper-scaled leader lowered its head toward him once more. "They are coming. They will destroy us. And without you, they will destroy all." Daniel felt his body go cold. He looked at the dragons, at the ships above, at the terrified people around him. He wanted to deny it, to say this was not his fight. But deep down he knew. Something about this moment had been waiting for him. Something beyond reason. The dragons had not chosen anyone else. They had chosen him. And now, with the world watching, he had to answer. Daniel stood frozen, his eyes shifting between the dragons kneeling before him and the alien ships burning through the clouds above. The air was heavy with smoke and fear, and every heartbeat felt like a hammer striking inside his chest. People around him shouted, some begging the dragons to leave, others screaming at Daniel to run, but none of their voices mattered. The copper-scaled dragon's eyes locked on him, and the voice in his mind grew louder, clearer. Human, we did not come to frighten. We came to beg. Daniel's throat felt dry, his words barely leaving his lips. Beg? From me. The dragon lowered its head again, and the ground trembled beneath its weight. Yes. From you. Its tone carried something Daniel had never imagined a creature like this could hold: desperation. Why me? I'm no hero. I'm nobody, Daniel whispered, his hands shaking. But the dragon's answer made his blood run cold. Because you are the one written in fire. The one our prophecy spoke of. The one who will change what is coming. Daniel stepped back, shaking his head. Prophecy. You've made a mistake. I can't fight your battles. The dragon's eyes glowed brighter, and the voice pressed harder into his mind. You already have. Do you not feel it? The bond is there. When you touched my scale, it awoke. You are chosen, whether you wish it or not. Daniel thought back to that moment earlier, when the copper scales had glowed under his hand. It hadn't been a trick. Something had passed between them, something alive. His stomach twisted as the alien ships roared louder above. He could see flashes of light, weapons charging, ready to strike. The other dragons shifted uneasily, their wings twitching, their throats glowing faintly with fire they were holding back. The humans nearby scattered, fleeing into the city, their fear filling the air. Daniel wanted to flee too, but something kept him rooted to the ground. Why are they chasing you? He demanded, forcing his voice to rise over the chaos. Why come to Earth? The copper-scaled dragon closed its eyes for a moment, and when the voice returned, it was heavy with sorrow. We are hunted. 4 centuries across galaxies, the Empire has sought our end. They call us beasts, weapons, monsters that must be erased. But we are not beasts. We are keepers of flame, guardians of knowledge older than their stars. And yet, we cannot stop them. Not alone. The words sank deep into Daniel's mind. He looked at the herd of dragons, dozens of massive beings who could burn entire cities to ash. Yet here they were, not destroying, not conquering, but begging. You want me to fight them? I can't even fight myself, Daniel muttered, anger and fear mixing in his chest. The dragon's great head lowered closer, so near that Daniel could feel the heat radiating from its scales. Not fight as they fight. Fight as only you can. The bond makes you more than human, and with us, more than dragon. You are the flame bearer. You can turn the tide. Daniel's mind swirled. Flame bearer. Prophecy. A galactic empire. Dragons kneeling before him. It was impossible. It was insane. And yet the evidence stood right before his eyes. He could hear their thoughts. He could feel their fire inside him. Whatever was happening was real. Above, the alien ships began to spread out, their metal forms cutting across the sky like blades. A voice thundered through the air, cold and mechanical, amplified so that all could hear. Creatures of flame. You cannot hide. You cannot run. This world will burn with you. Daniel's stomach dropped. The people of Earth had no idea what was coming. They had no defenses against ships like these. If the Empire decided to erase the city, there would be nothing left but ash. The copper dragon spoke again, its voice urgent now. Do you see, human? They do not care for us alone. If we fall here, your world falls with us. This is why we beg. This is why we kneel. Without you, Earth is lost. Daniel stared at the alien fleet, then at the herd of dragons crouched before him. His mind screamed for him to run, to deny, to pretend none of this was real. But another voice inside him, a quieter, stronger voice, rose above the fear. He remembered the way the dragon's scale had burned with light at his touch. He remembered the way the other dragons looked at him, waiting. Maybe he wasn't a soldier. Maybe he wasn't a hero. But right now, he was the only one they had. "If I say yes," Daniel said slowly, his voice trembling, "what happens to me?" The dragon's eyes narrowed, and the fire within them flared. "You will change. You will see what no human has ever seen. You will carry fire in your veins. But know this, there is no return. Once the bond is complete, you will never be the same again." Daniel's chest tightened. Never the same again. He looked once more at the people running in terror, at the sky filled with alien ships, and at the herd of dragons kneeling before him. Then he took a deep breath and clenched his fists. "Then show me," he whispered. "Show me what I need to do." For a moment, silence. Then the copper dragon raised its head, releasing a roar that shook the earth and split the clouds. The other dragons followed, their voices joining together in a storm of fire and sound. Daniel fell to his knees as the ground cracked and a wave of heat swept over him. He felt something push into his mind, into his very soul, a burning power that both terrified and filled him. His vision blurred. He saw fire, stars, endless battles, and himself standing at the center of it all. When his sight cleared, the copper dragon's voice returned, softer now. "It begins. You have chosen, Flame Bearer. Together, we fight. Together, we live, or together, we fall." Above them, the alien ships shifted, their weapons glowing brighter, ready to unleash destruction on Earth. Daniel's heart pounded as he realized there was no turning back. The plea had been answered. The bond had been made. And now, the war was about to begin. The roar of dragons still echoed across the land as Daniel knelt in the dust, his chest rising and falling in sharp breaths. He felt as though fire had poured into his veins, a heat that did not burn his skin but burned somewhere deeper, in his blood and in his soul. Around him, the herd of dragons shifted, their massive bodies moving like restless mountains. Their wings spread and folded, their eyes locked on him as if he were now something more than human. The copper-scaled dragon, larger and older than the rest, lowered its head once again, its golden eyes glowing like molten suns. The voice entered Daniel's mind, calm but heavy with meaning. "The bond is awakened. The prophecy of fire and flesh lives once more." Daniel swallowed hard, still shaking. "What prophecy? Why me? I need answers." The dragon's throat rumbled, a low growl that was neither anger nor threat but the sound of memory, ancient and heavy. "Long before your people rose, long before this empire spread its hand across the stars, there was a war. Not of worlds, but of balance. We dragons were not born as beasts of fire, but as guardians. Guardians of a flame older than suns, a flame that can create and destroy, a flame that chooses its bearer. The prophecy was carved in our scales and sung in our blood. One day, a human would touch the flame, and in that bond, fire and flesh would unite. Together, they would rise against the empire that seeks to silence all life." Daniel's head spun. It sounded impossible, like some old tale written for children, not something that could be real. Yet here he was, standing before creatures from legend, feeling a heat in his body that should not exist. "But I'm not special," he argued, his voice hoarse. "I've done nothing. I'm not a leader, not a fighter. Why would your prophecy choose me?" The copper dragon's gaze burned brighter, and the voice carried weight like thunder. "Because it is not about what you were. It is about what you will become." Daniel's breath caught in his throat. Around them, the other dragons began to hum, their throats glowing faintly with fire, their voices merging into a deep chant that shook the earth. Images filled Daniel's mind, not visions of the past, but of something larger, older. He saw a man standing in fire, his hands glowing as he commanded both dragon flame and the power of the stars. He saw galaxies burning and rebuilding, saw alien armies falling before a figure they could not understand. He saw hope and terror mixed into one. He pulled back, gasping, his knees digging into the dirt. "That's not me," he whispered. "That can't be me." The copper dragon bent lower until its enormous snout almost touched him. "You are flesh. We are fire. Alone, we fall. Together, we become the prophecy." Before Daniel could reply, the sky above split open with light. The alien ships had descended closer, their hulls glowing with deadly energy. A voice boomed down, mechanical and cold. "Surrender the creatures of flame. Surrender your world. Or burn with them." The humans who had not fled screamed and ran, scattering like ants before the coming storm. The dragons lifted their heads, their bodies tense, but they did not yet strike. They were waiting for him. Daniel's heart pounded as he looked between the burning sky and the herd of dragons crouched before him. He remembered the power he felt when he touched the copper dragon's scale, the way the flame had entered him. Fear pressed against him, threatening to crush him, but another feeling pushed back. A strange calm, a strength that was not his alone. He clenched his fists and forced himself to stand. "What do I need to do?" The copper dragon's eyes narrowed, and the voice filled his mind again. "Trust the fire. It will answer you. Place your hand upon my heart, and the bond will grow." Daniel hesitated for only a moment, then stepped forward. The copper dragon lowered its chest, scales glowing faintly like embers. Daniel pressed his hand against it. At once, heat surged into him, stronger than before, and his vision exploded with light. He felt fire racing through his blood, but instead of pain, it was power. His thoughts stretched outward, reaching beyond himself, and suddenly he could feel the dragons. Not just one, but all of them. He felt their fear, their courage, their loyalty. They were not beasts. They were voices, ancient and wise, carrying a fire that had lived for countless ages. And they were looking to him. "You are flesh," their voices echoed in his mind. "We are fire. Together, we are more." Daniel staggered back, his body trembling. Flames licked across his arms, curling upward like living tattoos, but they did not burn him. His eyes reflected the glow of fire, and for the first time, he felt something shift inside him, belief. He wasn't just Daniel anymore. Something else had begun. The copper dragon's voice returned, deep and certain. "You are the flame bearer. The prophecy is real. But know this, the Empire will not stop until you are ash. They fear you. They always have." Daniel's mind raced. If this was true, then the Empire knew about this prophecy. Maybe they had hunted dragons across galaxies not because they were beasts, but because they were guardians of a power that could end the Empire's rule. And now that power had chosen him. The sky thundered again as the alien ships aimed their weapons. The first shot lanced downward, striking the ground not far from where Daniel stood. The earth shook, fire exploded, and screams filled the air. Daniel flinched, but the fire inside him surged, responding. His hands glowed, and without thinking, he raised one toward the sky. A streak of flame burst upward, joining the roar of the dragons, slamming into the path of the next alien shot. It didn't stop it completely, but it deflected it enough to save the herd. The dragons roared in answer, their wings spreading wide, their fire igniting the night. Daniel gasped, staring at his own hands. He had done that. He, a simple man, had turned aside the fire of an empire. The copper dragon's eyes burned brighter. The prophecy has begun. Fire and flesh are one. The war for your world starts now. Daniel's heart pounded in his chest as he looked at the sky filled with alien ships. The bond was real. The power was real. And if the prophecy was true, he was now the one thing the Empire feared most. Daniel stood with his hands still glowing, his chest rising and falling like he had run 100 miles. The fire inside him slowly dimmed, leaving only a faint warmth in his veins, but the memory of what he had just done stayed sharp in his mind. He had turned aside the shot of a warship. He had done what no weapon on Earth could do. Around him, the herd of dragons watched in silence, their wings half open, their bodies trembling with restrained fire. They were ready to fight, ready to burn the skies, but they were also waiting. Waiting for him. The copper dragon bent its massive head low once more, its golden eyes locking with Daniel's. The bond is real. You feel it now. But the choice is still yours, human. Will you take the path that is written, or will you turn away? Daniel swallowed hard, his throat dry. The flames on his arms had faded, but the memory of their heat burned deep inside him. You're asking me to fight an empire, he said quietly. You're asking me to risk everything. Why should I? Why should I put my life on the line for you? The dragon's voice rumbled in his mind, heavy with sorrow. Because if you do not, your world will burn with us. They will not spare Earth. They do not spare anyone. Already they have marked this planet. They will make an example of it. The choice is not only ours now. It is yours. Daniel's chest tightened as he looked around. In the distance, buildings still burned from the first blast. People screamed and ran, their voices sharp in the night. He saw a child crying, clutching the hand of a mother who pulled her away from the fire. He saw soldiers trying to form lines with weapons that could never match the power above. His heart twisted. Earth was his home. These people were his people. And if the dragons were right, they were already part of this war whether they liked it or not. The copper dragon lowered its head closer. You are afraid. That is human. But courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is the choice to act, even when fear consumes you. Daniel clenched his fists, his mind tearing in two directions. One part of him wanted to run, to disappear, to pretend none of this was real. He had lived a small life, an ordinary life. He was no warrior. But another part of him, the part touched by the fire, refused to turn away. It whispered that he could do something no one else could. That if he walked away now, he would regret it forever. If I agree, he said slowly, what happens to me? The dragon's voice came back, deep and steady. You will change. You will learn to wield the fire. It will give you strength, but it will cost you. You will not be the man you were. The bond cannot be undone. Daniel's jaw tightened. And if I refuse? The dragon's eyes darkened. Then we die, and your world dies with us. The Empire will burn this planet to ash. They will erase all trace of you, as they have done to others before. Daniel turned away, his eyes lifting to the sky. The alien ships hovered like blades ready to strike, their weapons glowing with cold fire. His stomach turned to stone. He thought of his quiet life, of the days he had wasted, of the dreams he had buried. None of that mattered now. There was no going back. He had been chosen, whether by fate, prophecy, or pure chance. And the truth was clear, if he did nothing, everyone he knew would die. He closed his eyes, breathing deeply, then opened them again with fire in his gaze. I'll do it, he said. I'll stand with you. But not because of your prophecy. Not because you say I'm chosen. I'll do it because this is my world, and I won't let them take it. The copper dragon's roar shook the earth, a sound of approval and power. The herd answered, their voices rising like thunder, their fire lighting the night. Daniel felt their pride, their relief, flowing into him through the bond. For the first time, he understood, he was no longer just one man. He was part of them. The dragon's voice filled his mind again. Then it is decided. You are the flame bearer. Together we fight, together we burn, and together we rise. Daniel nodded, though his stomach still twisted with fear. Above, the Empire's ships shifted formation, their weapons charging again. A cold, mechanical voice rang out. Resistance is futile. The creatures of flame will be extinguished. The human will be erased. Daniel's jaw tightened. Let them come, he whispered. The copper dragon turned its head toward him. Then take your place, flame bearer. The battle begins now. With a single beat of its wings, the dragon launched into the air, a storm of dust and fire exploding behind it. The other dragons followed, their wings blotting out the stars as they rose into the burning sky. Daniel felt the fire inside him flare brighter, pulling him upward in spirit even as his feet stayed on the ground. For the first time, he felt not like a man watching from below, but like a commander of dragons. The Empire wanted him erased. But now, for the first time in his life, Daniel knew he would fight. He would not run. He had made his decision. The night sky cracked open with fire. Alien warships lowered through the clouds, their black metal bodies glowing with weapons ready to strike. Their engines roared like thunder, and their shadows swallowed the city below. People screamed and ran through the streets, but there was nowhere to hide. Above them, the dragons rose. With wings stretched wide, they formed a burning circle in the air, their throats glowing with fire waiting to be unleashed. Daniel stood on the ground, his heart pounding, his fists clenched. He could feel the bond pulling at him, connecting him to every dragon in the herd. Their fear rushed into him, their rage burned through him, and their courage steadied him. He was not flying with them, but through the bond he felt as though he was. The copper dragon's voice thundered in his mind. Flamebearer, the time has come. Command us. The fire waits for you. Daniel looked at the enemy fleet. The ships spread out across the sky like blades of steel, their weapons glowing brighter with each passing second. He swallowed hard, then raised his hand. Defend the city. Do not let them land. At once, the dragons roared. A storm of flame burst from their jaws, painting the night sky red and gold. Fire slammed into the leading ship, covering its metal hull in burning heat. The ship shook under the impact, alarms blaring, but it did not fall. Instead, it returned fire. Beams of energy shot down, slicing through the air. One struck the ground near Daniel, exploding into light and heat that knocked him back. He gasped and rolled, covering his head as debris rained around him. Through the bond, he felt the pain of one dragon that had been struck in the wing. The creature screamed in his mind, spiraling toward the earth. Daniel's chest tightened. He pushed himself to his feet, fire surging through his veins. "Hold the skies," he shouted. His voice echoed in the dragon's minds, filling them with strength. The injured dragon pulled itself up, wings beating furiously as it recovered in midair. The others dove toward the ships, claws scraping across metal, fire blasting into their weapons. For the first time, the Empire met resistance they had not expected. Daniel's vision blurred as the bond deepened. He saw through the copper dragon's eyes. He felt the rush of wind against its wings, the power of its muscles, the fire building in its chest. It was terrifying, but also exhilarating. He was no longer watching the battle, he was in it. "Left flank," Daniel shouted, raising his hand. The copper dragon dove, leading 3 others toward a smaller ship that broke formation. They struck together, fire and claws tearing across its engines. The ship spun out of control, flames bursting from its sides before it exploded in the sky. The crowd below gasped in awe. Humanity had just witnessed a dragon destroy an alien warship. But the victory was short-lived. The Empire's fleet answered with fury. Dozens of beams shot downward, cutting through the air like burning knives. 2 dragons were struck at once, their bodies twisting in pain as they fell. Daniel cried out, feeling their agony through the bond. The fire inside him flared in response, and his vision turned red. He raised both hands toward the sky, and without understanding how, he released the flame within him. A torrent of fire shot upward, brighter than the dragon's own, slamming into one of the largest ships. The ship's shields flickered under the impact, sparks flying as the metal hull cracked. The dragons roared in approval, their fire surging stronger, feeding off his energy. The copper dragon's voice boomed in his mind. "Do you see now? You are not only man. You are fire itself. Let us." Daniel's chest ached, his body trembling, but he kept his focus. The Empire's commander had not spoken yet, but Daniel could feel its presence through the bond, cold and sharp like a blade pressing against his neck. Whoever commanded those ships wanted him dead more than anything. The fleet shifted, circling the dragons, weapons locking on him. He was the target. "Stay close," Daniel shouted. The dragons formed a protective ring, their fire blasting outward in every direction as beams rained down. The sky became a storm of fire and light, of roars and explosions. Daniel's body shook with every hit, with every cry of pain from the herd. He could feel their strength, but also their limits. They were powerful, but the empire was endless. He clenched his fists tighter. "Not enough," he whispered. "We need more." As if answering him, the fire inside grew hotter. His vision blurred, and suddenly he was not just connected to the dragons, he was part of them. Their wings beat in his chest. Their fire burned in his lungs. Their rage roared in his throat. And with that bond, he gave the command. Together! All at once, the dragons turned toward the largest ship. Their fire united, merging into a single storm of flame that burned brighter than the sun. Daniel added his own power, his hands blazing as he pushed fire from his veins into the sky. The blast struck the ship head-on. Its shields cracked, metal melted, and with a final shudder the ship exploded, lighting the heavens with fire. For one heartbeat, silence. Then the people below erupted in cheers. They had seen the impossible. A human and dragons together had brought down a ship of the Empire. But Daniel did not cheer. His body shook, his head throbbed, and his chest burned. The bond was powerful, but it was tearing at him. He could feel how much it cost to use it, how much more it demanded. The copper dragon's voice whispered in his mind. "This is only the beginning. The Empire has more. They will not stop. And neither can you." Daniel looked up at the fleet still hovering above, their weapons glowing as they prepared to strike again. He clenched his fists and set his jaw. He had no choice. The first clash was not the end. It was the beginning of a war that would decide the fate of Earth, and his own soul. Smoke still hung in the sky as the wreckage of the destroyed alien warship burned in the night. Flames crackled across the city rooftops, and the distant sound of people cheering carried up through the chaos. Yet Daniel did not feel victorious. His chest ached, his breath came heavy, and his hands trembled with fire that refused to leave his veins. Around him, the dragons circled low, their wings beating slow and tired, their scales scorched from the first clash. The copper dragon landed near him, its eyes glowing with ancient fire. "You have tasted your power," the dragon's voice rumbled inside his mind. "But you are afraid of it." Daniel clenched his fists, the heat still swirling through his body. "Afraid. I almost lost control. I felt like the fire would burn me alive." The dragon lowered its massive head until its eyes were level with his. "That is because you resist. You fight against what is already part of you. The bond between human and dragon has chosen you. To reject it is to invite destruction." Before Daniel could respond, the ground shook. Another sound echoed from the sky, not cheers, but a hum like metal grinding against itself. From the clouds above, a massive shadow appeared. It was larger than the other ships, its body covered in sharp black armor, its engines glowing like suns. The people below screamed again, pointing upward. The Empire had sent a command ship. The copper dragon's voice darkened. "This is no ordinary vessel. It carries the mind of a warlord. A creature that bends lesser beings with thought alone. If it senses you, it will strike." Daniel swallowed hard. The fire inside him stirred restlessly, almost as if it knew the warlord already. His mind buzzed with whispers, cold, sharp, and distant. He shook his head to clear it, but the whispers grew louder. He could almost make out words: human, fire, destroy. He clutched his head. "It's inside my mind." The dragon growled low, flames leaking between its teeth. "Shield yourself. Use the bond. Do not let it see what you are." But Daniel was struggling. The whispers pressed harder, cutting deeper. He fell to his knees, gripping the dirt. Images flooded his mind, worlds burning, fleets of ships conquering stars, species kneeling in chains. And above all of it, a shadowy figure with glowing eyes, watching him. Daniel gasped. It was the warlord. The copper dragon stepped closer, its wings spreading wide to shield him. But Daniel felt something else through the bond. Not just the dragon's strength, something buried deeper. A memory. A secret. His vision blurred, and suddenly he was not on the battlefield anymore. He was standing inside a cave of stone and fire. Dragons of all colors surrounded him, not alive but carved into the walls, glowing faintly as though their souls were still there. In the center of the cave burned a flame unlike any other. It was white, brighter than the sun, yet cold and calm like water. A voice spoke, not the copper dragons, not the warlords, but something older. Human, you stand at the edge of the first flame. This power was hidden long ago, sealed until one of your kind and one of ours became one. You are the first to awaken it. Daniel stared at the white fire. It pulsed in time with his heartbeat, pulling him closer. He reached out a trembling hand. What is it? Why me? The voice echoed through the stone. Because your people have always carried the spark. The Empire feared it. They tried to bury it. But fire cannot be buried. Fire always finds air. His fingers brushed the flame. For a moment, it did not burn him. Instead it poured into him, filling the cracks inside, steadying his body, calming the storm of rage. His eyes widened. This was different. It was not wild fire like before. It was controlled, balanced, yet infinite. The vision shattered. Daniel gasped, opening his eyes to the battlefield again. The copper dragon watched him closely. What did you see? Daniel stood slowly, his body no longer shaking. His veins glowed faintly with white light. I saw the first flame, he whispered. It was waiting for me. The dragon's eyes widened, ancient fear flickering in its gaze. Then the Empire already knows. That is why the warlord has come. They have hunted the first flame for generations. If you hold it, you are not only their enemy, you are their greatest threat. The warlord's ship drifted lower, its presence pressing against the minds of everyone below. People fell to their knees, clutching their heads. Even some dragons faltered midair, their wings trembling as the mental weight crushed them. Daniel felt it too, but the white fire inside him pushed back. The whispers tried to invade, but the flame burned them away. He raised his head and stared at the black ship. No, he said firmly. You don't own me. The warlord's voice boomed in his skull, louder now. Human, surrender the flame. Or watch your world die screaming. Daniel's heart pounded, but he stepped forward. The fire inside him pulsed brighter, wrapping around him like armor. He knew he could not yet win, but he also knew he could not bend. He turned to the dragons. They want the flame. That means it's the only thing they fear. If they fear it, we use it. The herd roared in response, their eyes burning with renewed strength. The copper dragon nodded. Then let us fight as one. Not just fire. Not just wings. But something greater. Daniel lifted his hands, and the white flame rose with him. It swirled upward into the sky, blending with the dragon's own fire. For a moment the entire battlefield lit up with light so bright it blinded the Empire's ships. The warlord's voice hissed with fury. So be it. You have chosen war. Then war you shall have. And the massive ship opened its belly, releasing a swarm of smaller attack craft, dark and sharp, filling the sky like locusts. The first battle had been hard. This one would be worse. But Daniel stood taller, the hidden power burning steady inside him. He was no longer just a man bound to dragons. He was something new. And the Empire would soon learn what that meant. The sky trembled with the roar of engines as the swarm of attack craft poured out of the warlord's command ship. They spread like a black storm, blocking out the stars, each ship glowing with deadly weapons. The people on the ground screamed and scattered, hiding in the ruins of their burning city. Dragons took to the air, their wings beating hard, their fire spraying across the first wave of attackers. But there were too many. Daniel stood at the center of the chaos, his body glowing faintly with the white flame. His heart pounded as he felt the power pulsing through him, but his mind whispered doubt. Could he really face the warlord? Could he protect everyone? The copper dragon lowered its head beside him, fire flickering between its teeth. The warlord tests us. He wants to break your spirit before he even fights you. Do not give him that victory. Daniel clenched his fists. Then I'll give him something else. Above them, the warlord's voice shook the air itself, as if the sky carried his words. Human, you dare to resist the will of the Empire? You dare to carry the flame that was never meant for you? I offer you one chance. Surrender now. Give yourself to me, and your people will be spared. Daniel's chest tightened. The offer was a lie, he knew it. The warlord would never spare Earth. He could feel the cruelty in the voice, the hunger for power. Yet the words echoed across the battlefield, reaching the ears of humans and dragons alike. Some froze, uncertain. Fear spread like fire through dry grass. Daniel stepped forward, his voice rising against the warlord's thunder. You want me? Then come down here yourself. Stop hiding behind your ships. A moment of silence followed. Then the warlord laughed, a deep sound that made the air itself shake. Very well. You have chosen. Then I will meet you, Flame-bearer. The command ship shifted. Its massive hull split open, and a shape descended from within. It was not a man, nor a beast, but something between. The warlord's body was armored like living metal, black and sharp, with lines of red light crawling through it like veins. His face was hidden by a mask shaped like a skull, and his eyes burned like suns. He landed with a crash that shook the earth, the ground splitting beneath his weight. The dragons roared in anger, circling above, but the warlord raised one clawed hand. Energy pulsed from him in a wave, knocking several of them from the air. Daniel felt the shock hit him too, but the white flame inside him resisted. The warlord's glowing eyes locked onto him. So, this is the human who thinks he can hold the first flame. Small, weak, but dangerous. I will tear the flame out of you and end this rebellion in one strike. Daniel's legs trembled, but he forced himself to stand tall. If I'm so small and weak, then why are you here yourself? For the first time, the warlord's mask tilted, as though studying him more closely. Because the flame is no ordinary fire. It is the power that could burn the empire itself. And you are its mistake. The warlord raised his clawed hand. The ground beneath Daniel exploded, cracks racing outward as black energy tore at the earth. Daniel leapt back, fire swirling around him. The copper dragon roared and breathed a torrent of flame, but the warlord caught it with his hand, crushing it as though it were smoke. The other dragons dived together, striking with claws and fire, but the warlord moved with terrifying speed, knocking them aside one by one. Daniel's heart pounded. He knew he couldn't face this monster with strength alone. He closed his eyes, reaching for the white flame. It surged within him, steady and bright. He raised his hand, and a pillar of white fire shot upward, splitting the sky. The warlord stopped, turning his gaze toward the light. For the first time, his voice carried a hint of anger. So it is true. The flame has awakened fully. Then I must take it now. He lunged forward. The ground shook as his massive form crashed toward Daniel, claws reaching out to rip him apart. Daniel thrust both hands forward, and the white flame burst outward in a wave. The impact was like thunder, the ground cracking and fire exploding between them. The warlord slid back a step, his armor scorched, but he did not fall. He tilted his head slowly. Interesting. You are stronger than I thought. But strength without control is nothing. He raised his hand again, and black chains of energy lashed out, wrapping around Daniel's arms and chest. The white fire burned against them, but they held tight, pulling him down. Daniel fell to one knee, struggling, his fire flickering. The warlord stepped closer, his glowing eyes burning into him. Do you feel it, human? That weakness? That fear? You will break. All of you break. Daniel gasped, his body shaking under the weight of the chains. He could feel them digging into his mind, not just his body. They whispered of failure, of hopelessness, of death. He gritted his teeth, but the darkness pressed harder. Then, through the haze, he heard another voice. The copper dragon's voice, steady and firm. Do not fight alone. The flame is not just yours. It is ours. Let us share the burden. Daniel opened his eyes. The dragons above had formed a circle, their fire flowing together, their strength pouring through the bond into him. He felt their heat, their wings, their hearts. The flame inside him blazed brighter, fed by their will. The chains cracked. The warlord's eyes widened as the white fire surged, shattering the bindings. Daniel rose to his feet, his body glowing like a star. "You're wrong," he said, his voice steady. "I'm not alone. And I will never break." He thrust his hands forward again, the fire exploding outward, larger and brighter than before. The blast struck the warlord, throwing him back across the field, his armored body crashing through stone. Dust rose into the air as silence fell. For a moment, it seemed the warlord had fallen. The people watching gasped in hope. But then the dust parted, and the warlord rose slowly, his armor cracked but his eyes burning hotter than ever. "Very well, human. You have earned my respect. But this is only the beginning. I will not stop until the flame is mine. And when I return, I will bring not just ships, but the full wrath of the Empire." He raised one hand, and in a flash of dark light, he vanished back into the command ship. The swarm of attack craft pulled back, following their master. In moments, the sky was empty again. The battle was over. But Daniel knew the war was not. He fell to his knees, exhausted, as the dragons landed around him. The copper dragon bent close, its eyes burning. "You survived the challenge." But the warlord spoke true. This was only the first battle. Greater storms are coming. Daniel looked up at the night sky, still glowing faintly with fire. His chest ached, but the flame inside him burned steady. "Then let them come," he whispered. "We'll be ready." The night after the warlord's retreat was not quiet, for the air still carried the echo of his laughter, the ground still smoldered from the clash of fire and shadow, and the people trembled knowing that victory had not ended the war but only delayed its storm. Daniel sat among the ruins, his body aching, his breath heavy, his mind circling around the warlord's promise to return with the full might of the Empire, and though the white flame inside him burned steady, it also whispered the truth. He was not ready for what was coming. The copper dragon crouched beside him, its massive form curled around the survivors like a shield, its golden eyes fixed on the stars where the warlord's ship had vanished. "The storm has only begun," it said in a low rumble that carried both warning and strength. Daniel lifted his head, his gaze tracing the broken skyline of the city where shattered towers lay like bones across the earth, where smoke still rose from fires that had not yet died, and he thought of the people who hid in fear, waiting for someone to guide them. His heart pounded with the weight of that responsibility. He had never asked for power, never sought to be chosen, but now he was the bearer of a flame that could shape the fate of worlds. Dragons landed one by one, their wings stirring the ash into whirling clouds, their scales glimmering faintly in the moonlight, and each lowered its head toward Daniel in silent respect. He felt the bond between them strengthen, as though his defiance against the warlord had woven him deeper into their ancient circle. But even their fire would not be enough against the Empire's full wrath. The copper dragon leaned closer, its voice like rolling thunder. "We must prepare. The Empire will not wait long. When the storm returns, it will cover the skies in endless metal. And when that happens, neither dragons nor humans can stand divided." Daniel nodded slowly, the truth settling deep in his chest. "Then we unite," he said, his voice rough but firm. "Not just dragons and humans. Anyone who refuses the Empire. We'll find them, bring them together, and stand as one." The words surprised even him, yet they felt right, as though the flame itself guided his resolve. The copper dragon tilted its head, studying him with eyes that seemed to see beyond flesh into spirit. Spoken like one who leads, it murmured. Daniel looked down, uncertainty flickering across his face. "I'm no leader. Perhaps not yet. But the flame makes no mistakes. The words lingered in his mind as the days passed. News of the battle spread across Earth, carried by fleeing ships and whispers from survivors. Many feared the Empire's return, but some saw hope in the sight of a human standing against a warlord and living. Small groups began to gather near the ruins, drawn to the dragons, drawn to Daniel, their eyes filled with both fear and expectation. He did not know how to answer their questions, how to shoulder their faith, but he knew he could not turn them away. Training began in the shadow of broken towers. Dragons taught humans how to channel fire through weapons, how to stand against the Empire's soldiers, how to fly with them in the skies. Children watched wide-eyed as wings spread across the horizon. Farmers, workers, and old soldiers picked up blades again, their hands shaking but their eyes steady. Daniel trained with them, not as a hero above them but as one of them, sweating, stumbling, rising again, his flame flickering brighter each day. Yet at night, when the fires burned low, doubt crept back in. He remembered the warlord's strength, the chains of darkness that had nearly broken him, the way even dragons had fallen before that power. Could unity truly be enough? On the fourth night, the answer came in fire. A blast ripped through the sky, lighting the horizon red, followed by the thunder of explosions. Scouts returned breathless, shouting that the Empire had begun its assault on another city across the sea. Daniel's blood ran cold. The warlord had kept his word. He was bringing the storm. The copper dragon lowered its head toward Daniel. We must fly. If the Empire breaks that city, fear will spread like poison. The people must see us fight, must see the flame burn bright again. Daniel clenched his fists, the fire within him responding to his resolve. Then let's show them, he said. Together they rose into the air, wings and fire filling the night. Dozens of dragons soared with him, their roars shaking the stars, and behind them flew small human craft, crude but determined, carrying men and women who had chosen not to bow. The storm awaited them on the horizon, a fleet of Empire ships blotting out the moon, their weapons flashing like lightning, their engines howling like an endless beast. Beneath that terrible sky, the city burned. Daniel's heart ached as he saw families fleeing through the streets, their cries lost beneath the roar of destruction. Rage flared within him, the white flame bursting from his skin, trailing behind him like a comet. The Empire ships turned, targeting him, streams of energy screaming through the air. Dragons weaved between them, fire answering fire, and the battle tore open the night. Daniel flew straight through the barrage, his hands blazing, his eyes fixed on the largest ship at the center. He struck with all his strength, white fire lashing across its hull, tearing metal apart in a storm of sparks. The ship shuddered, but even as it fell, more rose behind it, countless and relentless. The storm was here, and it would not stop. Yet Daniel did not falter. He shouted above the roar, his voice carried by fire and fury. We are not your slaves. We are not your prey. This is our world, and we will fight for it. The words echoed across the battlefield, and though the Empire's ships did not listen, the people below did. They looked up through their tears and saw a human wrapped in fire standing against the storm, and for the first time they did not feel fear but courage. Dragons roared in unison, their fire burning hotter. Humans fought harder, their hearts ignited. And though the storm raged without end, something new rose to meet it: hope. The battle raged for hours, and though Daniel and the dragons struck hard against the Empire fleet, the storm only grew heavier, wave after wave of metal ships pouring from the skies like an endless tide, their weapons cutting through towers, burning fields, and tearing the earth itself apart. And for every ship they destroyed, two more seemed to rise from the horizon, until even the dragons began to falter, their wings scorched, their fire weakening. Daniel fought at the center, his white flame burning brighter than ever, but each strike drained him, each blast of fire pulling deeper from his body, leaving his muscles trembling and his vision blurred. Still he refused to stop, for he knew if he fell then the hope that had risen in the hearts of the people would fall with him. The copper dragon circled near, roaring warnings as swarms of enemy craft closed in, their beams slicing through the air, and Daniel felt the weight of their endless numbers pressing down like a mountain. He thought of the warlord, still out there somewhere, watching, waiting for the moment to strike again, and fear threatened to break him. But then he saw the faces below, the people who had refused to bow, who had chosen to fight beside him despite their weakness, and the fear turned to fire. He rose higher, flame trailing like a banner, and shouted words that echoed across the battlefield. "We will not break. We will not bow. Even if the storm takes everything, it will not take our will." The dragons roared in answer, their voices rolling like thunder, and the humans on the ground cheered even as the battle tore around them. For a brief moment it felt as though they could stand forever, as though unity itself could shield them, but then the Empire unleashed its true power. The sky split open as a massive ship descended, larger than any they had faced, its hull black as night, its engines burning with crimson light, and as it emerged the smaller ships pulled back in silence as though even they feared it. Daniel felt the flame inside him flicker, for he knew what it was, the warlord's flagship. A shadow fell over the city as the colossal vessel loomed, its cannons glowing with energy so strong the very air seemed to vibrate. The copper dragon's eyes narrowed. "This is the breaking point," it said grimly. "If we fall here, the world is lost." Daniel's chest tightened, sweat running down his face as he tried to summon more flame, but his body trembled under the strain. The flagship fired. A beam of crimson energy lanced down, striking the earth with a thunderclap, and in an instant half the city was gone, reduced to fire and dust. The people screamed, dragons cried out in fury, and Daniel felt rage explode in his chest, hotter than anything he had ever known. He hurled himself at the flagship, his flame blazing so bright it lit the battlefield like a second sun, and slammed into its shields. For a moment the ship trembled under his power, sparks bursting across its hull, but then the shields flared and threw him back, sending him crashing through the sky. Pain ripped through his body, his fire flickering, but he forced himself to rise again. He would not give in. Dragons swarmed the flagship, their fire striking its shields, their claws tearing at its armor, but one by one they were struck down by blasts of crimson energy. Human ships dove at it in desperation, but they shattered against its defenses. The flagship was more than a weapon, it was a statement, a declaration of the Empire's unstoppable might. The warlord's voice boomed across the skies, carried by speakers that echoed through the smoke. "You cannot win, human. You cannot fight the storm. Surrender, and I will spare what remains of your world." Daniel's vision blurred, his breath ragged, but he forced himself to stand tall against the burning sky. "No," he shouted, his voice hoarse but unbroken. "You will not break us. You will not own us. This world will never kneel." The warlord laughed, a sound like thunder rolling over a grave. The flagship's cannons glowed again, aiming at the heart of the city where survivors huddled in fear. Daniel's heart pounded, knowing he could not stop it alone, yet he refused to give in to despair. He looked at the dragons, their wings torn, their fire fading, yet their eyes still burning with defiance. He looked at the humans, clutching weapons though they knew they were powerless, yet still refusing to run. And he realized something, the flame was not just his. It was theirs too. It had always been theirs. He spread his hands wide, the fire bursting from his chest in a blazing wave, and shouted, "Share it! Take the flame! Stand with me!" The white fire leapt from him like lightning, flowing into dragons, into humans, into every heart that refused to bow, and suddenly the battlefield changed. Dragons roared as their fire turned white, hotter and purer than ever before. Humans gasped as their weapons glowed, their bodies filled with strength they had never known. The copper dragon's scales blazed with radiant light as it rose higher, its wings burning with white flame. For the first time the Empire fleet hesitated, their formations breaking as they faced not one bearer of the flame but hundreds. Together they struck. Firestorm met crimson, steel met will, and the sky became a sea of light and shadow. The flagship shook under the assault, its shields cracking, its cannons flickering. The warlord's voice rose in anger, no longer mocking but furious. "Impossible! You are nothing." Daniel, burning brighter than ever, flew straight toward the flagship's heart, his allies blazing around him, and shouted with every ounce of strength left in his body. "We are not nothing. We are free." He slammed into the flagship's core, fire erupting in a blinding explosion that lit the heavens. The world shook as the flagship groaned, its shield shattering, its black hull tearing apart. And as the fire raged, Daniel felt his body breaking, his flame burning everything within him, yet he did not stop, for this was the moment, the breaking point, and either the Empire would fall or he would. The explosion roared, the flagship split open, and for a heartbeat the storm faltered. The explosion from the flagship tore across the skies, light brighter than the sun filling the battlefield as pieces of black metal rained like falling stars, crashing into mountains and seas with thunder that echoed for miles. And for a brief moment it felt as if the war was over, as if the storm had finally broken. But when the fire cleared, the truth became clear, for though the great ship was shattered and its shields destroyed, a burning core still floated in the air, wrapped in crimson light, and from it emerged the warlord himself, his armor glowing red, his body like a living weapon, eyes burning with fury so intense even the bravest dragons faltered. The battlefield fell silent, dragons circling, humans staring upward, for they all knew this was no ordinary foe. This was the storm-given flesh, the enemy who had destroyed countless worlds, and he had come now to end this one himself. Daniel, his body weak, his flame nearly gone, hovered in the air before him, chest heaving with every breath, but he refused to bow. The warlord's voice thundered across the skies, filled with rage. "You are nothing, human. You think you can stand against me? I am the Empire. I am the storm. You are only a spark, and sparks die." He raised his hand, and a blast of crimson energy shot forward, striking Daniel and hurling him back through the clouds, pain ripping through his body as if every bone were breaking. But still he rose again, fire flickering faintly in his chest. "Maybe I am a spark," Daniel said, his voice hoarse, "but even a spark can light a fire that consumes the storm." The dragons roared in answer, surging toward the warlord, their fire blazing white, but he struck them down with sweeps of his hand, beams of crimson tearing through their wings and scales, sending them crashing into the ground below. The humans fired their weapons, arrows and beams glowing with the flame Daniel had given them, but the warlord's armor turned them aside, his laughter booming like thunder. Hope trembled, and fear returned, for it seemed that even united they were still powerless before him. Daniel's body shook, his vision blurring, but inside he felt the flame whispering, not fading, not gone, but waiting. He realized then that the fire was not meant to be held, not meant for one alone, but for all. He closed his eyes and reached deep, calling not for more power but for connection, for unity. "Take it," he whispered. "All of it. Every drop. This is not my fight alone. It belongs to us all." And the flame burst from him in a wave so vast it filled the battlefield, flowing into every dragon, every human, into the very earth itself, and suddenly the world blazed with white fire. Dragons rose again, their wounds closing, their wings shining like living light. Humans stood taller, their eyes glowing, their weapons burning brighter than ever before. Even the broken stones of the city seemed to hum with power, as though the land itself had awakened to fight. The warlord snarled, his crimson glow flaring, and for the first time there was fear in his eyes. "Impossible," he spat. "You cannot defy me. You cannot defy the Empire." But the answer came not from one voice but from thousands, dragons roaring, humans shouting, their voices rising together. "We are free." They charged as one, fire and steel, will and fury, striking the warlord from all sides. He fought with the strength of a storm, his blows shattering mountains, his blasts burning skies. But for every dragon he struck down 2 more rows blazing white. For every human he hurled aside 10 more stood in their place. Daniel, his body nearly gone, floated at the center, guiding the flame, holding them all together, his spirit burning even as his flesh weakened. He knew he could not survive this, but he also knew survival was not the point. Victory was. He hurled himself at the warlord one last time, his body blazing brighter than ever, and shouted with the strength of every voice behind him. "This ends now." He slammed into the warlord's chest, the combined fire of dragons and humans flowing through him, pouring into the enemy in a torrent of light. The warlord screamed, his crimson armor cracking, his body burning, and with a final thunderous cry he exploded in a storm of fire and shadow, the sound echoing across the heavens. Silence followed. The battlefield was still, the Empire fleet shattered, the sky clear for the first time in days. Slowly the people raised their heads, dragons hovering weakly but alive, humans standing amid ruins, and realization spread, the storm was gone. Daniel floated in the air, his body flickering with white light, his face calm. He looked at his friends, at the dragons and the people who had fought beside him, and smiled faintly. "The flame is yours now," he said softly. "Guard it well." And then his body dissolved into light, the flame rising into the sky like a star before spreading across the horizon, leaving only warmth in its place. The people wept, not in despair but in pride, for they knew his sacrifice had given them not just victory but freedom. The copper dragon lowered its head, tears in its blazing eyes, and spoke to the gathered survivors. "He is gone, but his fire lives in us. We are no longer prey, no longer slaves. We are guardians, all of us, and the storm will never rise again." The humans raised their weapons high, their voices echoing in a promise that shook the earth. Never again. And so the world entered a new age, not ruled by fear or empire, but bound by flame, unity, and the memory of the human who had stood against the storm and changed everything.